Hello again. It's me to give us yet another update on the progress of our renovation here at St. Mary of the Assumption Parish. Many things have been happening over the last couple of weeks. Some of them you'll be able to see, some of them perhaps our parishioners have recognized as they come to worship over the last couple of weekends. Other things are happening but are not seen, but the work is progressing with great success. And so the last time that I spoke to you, I mentioned that our need was to upgrade our electrical service, that there was a need to be able to consider, we have a 400 amp service, we considered 800. National Grid informed us that we only need 600. So in the meantime, we have been preparing the pads that will be able to receive the heat pumps. They are on either side of the church. Anybody who has been by our church, even if you haven't come in, you will have noticed on the outside, one section, as we can see on this particular slide, is on the corner of Sumner and Winter Streets at the back end of the church, just outside the windows where the Blessed Sacrament is. And then our next slide, shows us the other side, which is right outside the sacristy and the glass doors that lead into the parish center. These areas have been excavated. The last slide showed us the removal of the stumps and the trees. Now we have excavated that area. They've poured in some crushed stone, leveled that, and then been able to pour some cement. So what we see in the next slide are members of Braza Construction Company, which is our own parishioners who are preparing the pads on each side. They created a form, filled it with some rebar, and then cement was poured over that. And then once the cement had cured, bracing was set up to be able to receive the staging for the heat pumps. They will be delivered on Monday, September 14th. So if you're watching this after that date, if you drive by, you should be able to see the equipment standing on these cement pads on either side of the church as we do that. Our next slide takes us to inside the church, to our heating, our ventilation, and air conditioning system. There are now 10 units on either side of the church. They've arrived, been hung and installed. They are wired, and they are all plumbed in order to be able to receive the coolant or the heating that will come from the heat pumps inside to the church to provide either for heat or cooling. There's a new one here. The next slide shows you the unit that's being placed in the sacristy with regard to next to the sink in the sacrarium that we use to clean the vessels. You can see a brace on the wall. There's some wood that's been used to fill the gaps so that things don't fall down behind it because of the piping that is there in order to be able to provide for the cleaning of the vessels after Mass. Those of you who have been in the church the last couple of weeks have noticed that there was a small segment of our wainscoting that had been placed on the side of the church. This was just done in some pine and some particle board. It will be done with a much finer wood that will be stained to match the wood here in the church, and it will run the length of the church on either side from the front doors all the way to the windows and the paneling in the back. That will serve to camouflage all of this equipment and to blend it into the elegance of our church. There's a opening at the bottom, which you can see here in this slide, that will pull the air in and then pull it up through the unit where it will be heated in the winter, cooled in the summer, and then it will be discharged by a fan or through a grate that will be placed on the top of the wainscoting. That is at this point expected to be installed the week of Columbus Day. We have to make sure that the system is operational and totally functioning in order for them to be able to come and install the wainscoting. Our next slide takes us to the lower church. Not many people have been able to be there because we don't have services there at all. Some people do wander in every now and then during the week to pray. Although the Blessed Sacrament is not kept there, it's only kept in the large hall where we have Mass during the week because our workmen are here in the building. But you'll notice that the only heat that we ever had in the lower church was the heat that came off the pipes as it came through the lower church to fill the radiators up here and keep the upper church warm. Our new system will actually have dedicated heat or cooling for the lower church. So you see here the piping that's running from the old boiler room through the church and out to the corner. This particular corner is on the Winter Street side to the units that will be placed on those pads that we saw in the earlier slide. The picture to the right of that is actually of the sanctuary, and you'll notice that above the two stepladders, there is, if you can make out, a white box hanging from the ceiling. That is the new unit that will provide heating and cooling to the church, which will be temperature controlled specifically to the lower church. Our next slide gives you a view of what those units look like. To the left is the individual unit as it is hugged tight to the ceiling, and then you see along the Granite Street wall the units as they are hung over each of the windows. They're probably about 6 to 8 inches deep. They hang just above the alcove of the windows. There is piping that runs along the wall. That's where the pipes come up through the floor to the units in the upstairs church, and then take the condensation back through the floor and discharge that out of the building. Eventually that will all be covered with what's called a soffit, which is a wooden box that we will create to cover or to camouflage all of that, and then it will be painted in a way that would blend with the rest of the church depending upon how we decide to paint and to reconfigure that going forward. For those who have been in church at all in the last 6 months, you know that we've missed our magnificent windows. 4 of them have been taken out, and we have become quite familiar with this brown paper that covers 4 of them so that the sun doesn't glare into people's eyes. So those windows, the paper will be removed because those windows are coming back again beginning on September 14th. So we'll begin to see them come back, and as they do, hopefully it will be obvious to the eye that they've been cleaned, that they've been repaired, the lead will be new, and of course also our new donors who have helped us with this will have their names also inscribed on the windows, as well as the original donors from 1910. Not part of the church, but something that is part of what we've been working on as well, is evident in our next slide, which is our security grant. We received through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts a home security grant to help us as a nonprofit organization to be able to help make our buildings more secure. As you may have noticed in the news, several churches in the Boston area have been targeted with vandalism, particularly with arson. In my short time here in Milford, we had a break-in and we had damage that was done here as well. So this particular grant is to be able to limit access. It will allow us to provide an access that is digital. So the old keys pretty soon won't work at all, and those who do need access will actually be given a credit card looking device, much like what you get when you check into a hotel room. You'll touch that to a reader that will then unlock the door and allow people to enter. It will also give us knowledge about whose card has been used, what time it was used, what time the door was opened and closed, so that we can have better control over the security of our building, and it will hopefully not allow doors to be left unlocked, unexpected visitors to appear, and be able to keep all of us safe at a time when we are growing more concerned about each other's safety, and in particular, the safety here of our church. Our next slide is just again a review of the proposal that we're looking at. This is further down the line. We're looking at the discussion of going forward, what's the next thing that we do? Obviously, part of what we need to do is to work on our sound system, to upgrade our speakers and our microphones, and to make the things that we say and sing here in our worship to be able to be heard and understood by everybody. So that will be one of the next things that our committee has looked at. And then beyond that, we're discussing, do we paint the nave of the church, or do we try to renovate, paint the sanctuary as a view that everybody looks at the sanctuary when they come to worship, and then eventually to see if we can find the funding to be able to eventually paint the whole church. So these proposals are what we're looking at, to the painting of the sanctuary, and then the painting of each of the side bays around the windows and the Stations of the Cross, and the renovations that we are able to look for. And lastly, partly perhaps because we're writing checks for all of this, is to realize how important your contribution is. For almost a year, we've waited for something to happen in our church. It was last spring, April to July, when we did our fundraising. We wrapped a lot of that up in August, and then in September, people started to follow through on their pledges and their donations. And many times people ask me, what are you doing with all that money? Well, we were saving it, because the work that I've just shown you is costing us well over $500,000. And it's taken us well over a year to be able to save that kind of money. And so the difficulty is that without having worship and passing the basket, our second collection donations have dropped almost by a half, or even in some weekends by 2/3. We had anticipated that revenue as part of the budget, so we've been able to really work hard to be able to do the work that we are doing. Your generosity, the faithfulness of people, even in the midst of this pandemic, that fulfill their pledges, that send their payments, and that make contributions online, are truly funding and driving all of this effort. If you're wondering, well, how do I do that? You may look at this particular site, the online giving. If you have a cell phone, you use your camera to read the widget, which is that black and white box with the funny design in the lower right-hand corner. Your cell phone reads that as a camera, and it will take you directly to the website, where you can be able to set up a username and an account and be able to make a contribution. Otherwise, you can send us a donation by check, drop something in the mail. Certainly, we are doing this because our parishioners are being generous. They're supporting this in many, many ways. This is the way in which many hands not only make the burden light, but also make the work happen. So lastly, we want to realize we are indebted. Our parish is indebted to each of those who donate. This work will last at least 50 years, and hopefully 75 to 100 for the next generations to come. So we thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Muchísimas gracias. May the Lord bless you. Please keep our work in your prayers. The next 2 weeks will be critical. We'll bring you another update, and we're hoping that within 4 to 6 weeks, our church will be back to the way it belongs here in the upper church, and slowly all of these things will start to come online, and we'll be able to enjoy them as we head into the colder season here in New England. Once again, thank you, and may God bless you.